He smiled at me like I was being unreasonable. "You're too dramatic. It's just dinner with a friend." His voice was calm, almost amused, as if the question I'd asked didn't deserve seriousness, as if my concern was something small, inconvenient, something he could brush away without effort. I stood there for a moment, watching him button his jacket, noticing how carefully he avoided my eyes. I felt the familiar urge rise in my chest, the instinct to explain myself, to soften my words so he wouldn't accuse me of overreacting again. But I didn't. "Then enjoy your dinner," I said. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask him to stay or demand reassurance. I packed, quietly, slowly, with the kind of control that only comes after you've been dismissed one too many times. The next morning, when he opened the drawer beside the bed and saw what I had left inside, he went completely still. Not angry, not confused, frozen, like his body understood the truth before his mind was ready to catch up. My name is Diana B. Kelly. I'm 30 years old, and that was the night I stopped fighting to be believed and started protecting myself. I learned something important in that moment. Sometimes the loudest statements aren't made through confrontation. They're made through silence, through preparation, through walking away without asking for permission. I'd been with him for 3 years. 3 years of shared routines, shared spaces, shared plans for a future I believed we were building together. We met through work-adjacent circles, started dating naturally, moved in together after a year. He was charming, ambitious, attentive when he wanted to be. For a long time, I felt chosen. For a while, things were good. Then they weren't. But I told myself what so many women tell themselves. Every relationship has rough patches. I convinced myself that discomfort was normal, that doubt meant I needed to try harder, that love required patience even when it hurt. What I didn't realize was that while I was trying to save the relationship, he was quietly investing in another one, right in front of me. And when I noticed, when I finally said something, I was labeled dramatic, insecure, difficult. So that night, instead of arguing, I chose clarity. Because when someone is used to minimizing you, your quiet exit feels louder than any accusation ever could. I was 27 when I met him, fresh out of a demanding phase in my career and finally breathing again. I'd learned early how to be self-reliant, how to organize my life around deadlines, responsibilities, and quiet resilience. I wasn't reckless with my heart. If anything, I was careful, maybe too careful. We met through work-adjacent circles, one of those overlapping professional spaces where introductions feel casual but intentional. He was confident without being loud, attentive in a way that felt flattering rather than forced. He asked questions and waited for the answers. That mattered to me. I remember thinking he felt safe, like someone who knew who he was. Dating him was easy at first. Conversation flowed without effort. We laughed the way people do when they feel seen. He admired my independence, or at least he said he did. He told friends I was driven and grounded, words that sounded like respect back then. After a year, moving in together felt natural. No grand gesture, just the quiet understanding that our lives were already intertwined. Shared grocery lists, shared mornings, the comfort of routine. I believed in what we were building because nothing about it felt rushed or forced. For a long time, our relationship functioned on trust, real trust. The kind where you don't question every late night or every unexplained mood. The kind where you assume honesty because dishonesty hasn't given you a reason to exist yet. Looking back, the warning signs didn't arrive dramatically. They slipped in quietly. He became more protective of his phone, not hiding it outright, just angling it away, locking it when he used to leave it open, laughing at messages and not sharing why. When I asked how his day went, his answers shortened. When I tried to talk about mine, his attention drifted. His friends changed too. New routines, new priorities, more time out, less time present. I noticed how often I was the one adjusting. Waiting dinner, rescheduling plans, telling myself not to be needy. I didn't want to be the woman who demanded constant reassurance. I wanted to be secure, understanding, low maintenance. His family liked me well enough, but there was distance, polite smiles, surface-level conversations, no real investment. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't dating his family. I was dating him. The truth is, I ignored a lot because ignoring felt easier than confronting the possibility that something was changing in ways I couldn't control. I loved him, or at least I loved the version of him who used to look at me like I mattered. By the time another name started appearing in our conversations, I was already telling myself to stay calm, to stay reasonable, to trust. I didn't know yet that trust, when unreturned, slowly turns into self-betrayal. And I definitely didn't know how much silence I'd already swallowed just to keep the peace. The problems didn't announce themselves. They crept in quietly, disguised as normal changes, the kind people warn you not to overreact to. I remember telling myself that I was being mature, that I wasn't the kind of woman who monitored every message or questioned every plan. It started with him going out more. At first, it was group things, after-work drinks, birthday dinners, gym friends I hadn't met yet. He'd tell me he'd be home around 9, then stroll in closer to 11 with an easy smile and a vague explanation. Time got away from us. I'd nod, even though something in my chest tightened every time the clock crept past the hour he promised. Then the phone habits changed. He didn't hide his phone, not overtly. He just became aware of it, tilting the screen away when I walked by, clearing notifications before setting it down, laughing at messages without offering context. When I asked who it was, he'd answer casually, like the question itself was unnecessary. Just someone from the gym. Just work stuff. I didn't push. I told myself trust meant restraint. Then the name started appearing. Not all at once, just enough to be noticeable. He said the funniest thing today. He recommended this podcast. He thinks I'd be really good at this new workout. I heard that name so often it began to settle into the space between us. At first I brushed it off. People are allowed to have friends. I wasn't threatened by every male presence in his life. I refused to become that woman. But the mentions didn't stop, they increased. Group dinners he organized. Morning coffee because they were both early risers. Workout sessions that somehow always ran long. I noticed how carefully my partner started dressing for the gym. New clothes, extra cologne, more time in front of the mirror than I'd seen in years. 2 weeks before everything fell apart, I finally asked. We were having breakfast on a Saturday morning. He was texting and smiling at his phone, completely absorbed. I kept my voice neutral, almost clinical. Is that him? He looked up, already annoyed. Yeah, he's asking if I want to try a new cycling class. You two spend a lot of time together, I said carefully. He's a friend, Diana. Am I not allowed to have friends? Of course you are. I just find it interesting that you talk about him constantly, and lately you're with him more than you're with me. That's when his tone shifted. He put his phone down, harder than necessary. Are you seriously doing this right now? I'm not accusing you of anything, I said. I'm noticing patterns. You're being dramatic, he snapped, and insecure. He's just a friend. We have similar goals. That's it, I nodded. Okay, if you say so. But I didn't believe him. Something in the way he dismissed me, in the speed with which he labeled my concern as a flaw, made it impossible to ignore the feeling settling in my gut. So I started paying attention. I noticed he showered immediately after the gym, even though he claimed he'd already showered there. I noticed message notifications disappearing from his lock screen. I noticed how I was no longer invited to any of these group activities. The air between us grew heavy. Conversations became shorter. Touch became rarer. When I reached for him, he pulled away without explanation. I didn't realize it then, but the relationship was already shifting. Not with a single betrayal, but with a slow, deliberate distancing that made me question my instincts instead of his behavior. And when the invitation to that Friday night dinner came, I finally understood what all those small moments had been preparing me for. The announcement came on a Tuesday, delivered casually, like it was no bigger than picking up groceries. I'm going to dinner with him on Friday, he said, not looking up from his phone. With him? I asked. My voice stayed calm, but my body didn't miss the shift. My shoulders tightened. My stomach dropped. Yes, just the two of us. We're celebrating because he hit a personal record at the gym. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that he understood how this sounded. There was none. Just the two of you? I repeated. Yes, he said, already defensive. Why? That sounds like a date. He scoffed. It's not a date, it's dinner between friends. When you get dressed up and go out one-on-one to celebrate something personal, I said slowly, choosing my words, that's usually called a date. He rolled his eyes so hard it felt theatrical. You're being ridiculous. I'm trying to talk about boundaries, I said, about how this looks, about how it makes me feel. You're trying to control me, he snapped. I'm going whether you like it or not. I didn't say you couldn't go, I replied. I said I was uncomfortable. He stood up abruptly, grabbed his phone, and walked toward the bedroom. I can't do this with you right now, he said, slamming the door behind him. That was Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday were a study in avoidance. He barely spoke to me, slept on his side of the bed, turned away, left early, came home late. When I tried to bridge the silence, he acted like I was exhausting him. By Friday, the air in the apartment felt brittle. He spent nearly 2 hours getting ready, hair carefully styled, full cologne, clothes I'd only ever seen him wear on nights that were supposed to be special between us. I sat on the couch, watching him check himself in the mirror again and again. You look nice, I said flatly. Thanks, he replied, already reaching for his jacket. I'll be back around 10. Don't wait up. At the door, he paused and looked back at me, irritation flashing across his face. And Diana, stop being so dramatic. It's just dinner with a friend. I studied him for a long moment. The man I loved. The man who had been slowly pushing me out while insisting nothing was wrong. Then enjoy your dinner, I said. He left. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring at the closed door, listening to the silence settle in. Something in me shifted then. Not anger, not grief. Clarity. I was done explaining myself to someone committed to misunderstanding me. I stood up and started packing. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I moved with intention. Clothes folded neatly. Important documents set aside. Laptop. Personal items. 2 suitcases. 3 boxes. Everything that was mine. Everything that mattered. Then I went to the bedside drawer. The one thing I'd been preparing for months was waiting there. Because I wasn't naive. When his behavior had started changing, I'd done something I wasn't proud of, but didn't regret. On our shared tablet, I'd installed a recovery app. It backed up messages automatically. At first, there was nothing alarming. Then the tone changed. Flirting, compliments, late-night conversations, pet names, messages about how complicated his relationship was, about how alive he felt, about wishing things were different. I printed everything. I placed the folder neatly in the drawer with a single note on top. You were right. I was being too dramatic. Enjoy your friendship. Diana B. Kelly. I took one last look at the apartment. 3 years of my life, and I felt nothing. That scared me more than anger ever could. I loaded my car, texted my brother that I needed a place to stay, and drove away at 9:47 p.m. 13 minutes before he said he'd be home. I didn't hear from him that night. At first, I assumed he came home late, dropped his keys on the counter out of habit, and went straight to bed without noticing the quiet, without noticing that my shoes were gone, that my coat wasn't hanging by the door, that the bathroom shelf held only his things. I slept at my brother's place, curled up in the guest room like I was borrowing someone else's life. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a spare blanket and said, "You're safe here." That was enough. Saturday morning, my phone exploded. 17 missed calls, 34 text messages. All from him. The first ones were confused. Where are you? Your stuff is gone. What the hell, Diana? Answer me. Then the tone shifted. I found the folder. We need to talk right now. This is insane. I read them slowly while the coffee brewed, my hands steady in a way that surprised me. For months, every conversation had left me shaken, doubting myself. Now, with the truth laid out in black and white, I felt oddly grounded. One message stood out. You went through my private messages. You had no right. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I replied with a single text. I had every right to protect myself when you were lying to me. We're done. I'll arrange to get the rest of my things next week. My phone rang immediately. I let it ring. It rang again. I declined it again. Then came calls from numbers I didn't recognize. His mother, his sister, even his number again, masked. I blocked them all. Around noon, my brother knocked on the door. There's a woman outside screaming your name, he said carefully. I'm guessing that's him. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, don't let him in. He nodded, but his eyes said what he didn't out loud. You're going to have to face this. When I stepped onto the porch, he was there, mascara smeared, hair unbrushed, wearing pajamas like he'd come straight from the bed we used to share. The moment he saw me, he tried to push past my brother. Diana, we need to talk. We don't, I said calmly. You made your choice. I made mine. You're ending this over dinner with a friend? He cried. I shook my head. I am ending this over months of lying, emotional cheating, and gaslighting me when I tried to talk about it. I didn't cheat, he insisted. We never even kissed. You had an emotional affair, I said. You know exactly what you were doing. The messages prove it. His hand clutched the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. You violated my privacy. You violated our relationship, I replied. I'd say we're even. Please, he said, voice breaking. Can we talk inside, just privately? No. My voice didn't waver. You wanted to explore something new while keeping me as your safety net. I'm removing myself from that equation. That's not what was happening, he said desperately. I was confused. I love you. You don't love me, I said softly. You love the stability I provided while you tested someone else. That's not love. That's convenience. My brother stepped forward then. You need to leave. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Where are you going to go? That's our apartment. It's your apartment, I said. The lease is in your name. I was month to month, so I left. You can keep it. He stared at me, stunned. You're being cruel. I'm being done, I said. There's a difference. I turned and walked back inside. Behind me, the door closed. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was finally letting go of what had already left. The days after I left felt unreal, like I was watching my own life from a few steps outside my body. I stayed at my brother's place, worked remotely, moved through the hours on autopilot. The world didn't stop just because my relationship had collapsed. Emails still came in. Deadlines still existed. The contrast was disorienting. He didn't stop trying to reach me. When he realized his number was blocked, he started using other people, mutual friends, his sister. Even messages passed through coworkers who just wanted to check in. Every attempt carried the same undertone. You're overreacting. You should hear him out. I gave the same response every time. I'm not discussing this. He knows what he did. Some friends understood immediately. Once they saw the messages, the screenshots, the timeline, their sympathy shifted. Others hesitated, clinging to the idea that emotional betrayal was somehow negotiable. I learned quickly who valued peace over truth. His family escalated things further. His mother left a voicemail accusing me of humiliating him, of handling things coldly, of embarrassing their family. She never once asked if I was okay, never questioned his behavior, only my reaction. That was clarifying. Then came the rewriting of the story. I started hearing it through the grapevine. He was telling people I'd been distant, that I was controlling, that I invaded his privacy and left without warning, that he was blindsided. It would have been easier if it had hurt more, but by then I was past shock, past denial. What I felt instead was a strange, steady resolve. He wasn't just losing me. He was losing credibility. People began comparing notes. Timelines didn't add up. His version kept shifting depending on who he was talking to. The messages he claimed were out of context, told a very clear story when read straight through. Meanwhile, the man he'd been so eager to impress stopped being a secret. They were seen together. Coffee, long walks, familiar body language. The same patterns I'd noticed months earlier. The same intimacy he'd sworn was harmless. He still denied it when confronted. That denial cost him more than honesty ever would have. I could feel myself changing in the middle of all this. The constant self-doubt that had lived in my chest for months began to dissolve. I stopped replaying conversations, stopped asking myself what I could have done differently. I stopped trying to explain. I slept better. I breathed deeper. The tension in my shoulders loosened for the first time in a long while. One evening, my brother sat beside me on the couch and said, "You know, you handled this with more grace than most people would." I thought about that. Grace hadn't been my goal. Survival had. But maybe grace was what it looked like when you finally chose yourself. As the noise around me grew louder, opinions, accusations, unsolicited advice, I felt something inside me grow quieter and stronger at the same time. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was standing. And that was when I realized the hardest part wasn't leaving. It was watching someone unravel when they no longer had access to you. The quiet didn't arrive all at once. It settled in slowly, like dust, filling every corner of my thoughts once the noise around me finally died down. One night, a week after I left, I sat alone in my brother's guest room with the lights off, phone face down on the nightstand. The adrenaline had worn off. The clarity, too. What was left was the raw, unfiltered weight of it all. 3 years. 3 years of shared mornings, shared jokes, shared plans that now felt like props from a play that had ended abruptly. I replayed moments I used to cherish and saw them differently now. His smile when he thought he was getting away with something. The way he'd sigh when I asked for reassurance. The way I'd apologize just to keep the peace. That night, doubt crept back in. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should have talked longer. Maybe walking away without one last conversation was cowardly. Those thoughts were dangerous. They felt reasonable. They felt mature. They almost convinced me. I opened the folder on my laptop. Every message, every timestamp, every carefully chosen word he'd sent while telling me I was imagining things. I read them slowly, forcing myself not to skim. I needed to remember how it felt when I first realized the truth. The tightness in my chest, the humiliation of being lied to with such ease, the exhaustion of being made to feel irrational for trusting my instincts. That was my anchor. Still, the grief came in waves. I cried quietly into a pillow so my brother wouldn't hear. Not because I wanted him back, but because I was mourning the woman I'd been when I believed love meant endurance. I felt foolish for how long I'd stayed, for how much I'd rationalized. I wondered if this was my fault for ignoring the early signs, for being too understanding, too patient, for loving someone who loved attention more than accountability. The lowest moment came unexpectedly. I found an old photo on my phone, a candid shot from our second year together. We were laughing, foreheads pressed together, completely unaware of what was coming. I stared at it until my chest ached. And then I deleted it. Not out of anger, out of acceptance. That was the moment I understood something painful and freeing at the same time. I wasn't grieving the loss of him. I was grieving the loss of the future I'd imagined with someone who never existed the way I needed him to. The version of me that would have gone back, that would have begged for explanations, that would have accepted half-truths just to avoid being alone. That version of me reached her limit that night. I lay awake until morning, staring at the ceiling, feeling hollow but resolved. Sometimes hitting bottom doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet, lonely, final. And it's in that stillness, when there's nowhere left to run emotionally, that you finally stop bargaining with the past. You let it go. The shift didn't come with a phone call or a dramatic realization. It came the morning I woke up and didn't feel the urge to check my phone. No tightness in my chest. No instinct to brace myself for another message, another accusation, another attempt to rewrite what had already happened. I stood in the kitchen with a mug of coffee warming my hands and noticed how still everything felt. Not empty, not sad, just quiet in a way that felt earned. That was when I realized something important. I wasn't confused anymore. For weeks, I'd been replaying conversations, wondering if there was some missing piece, some explanation that would suddenly make his behavior understandable, forgivable. But clarity doesn't always arrive as new information. Sometimes it arrives when you stop lying to yourself. I didn't leave because of one dinner. I didn't leave because of one person. I left because I was slowly disappearing inside a relationship that required me to doubt my own reality. That afternoon, I got a call I didn't expect. It was his sister. We'd always gotten along, not close, but honest. She didn't waste time with small talk. "I need you to know something," she said. "He's lying. To everyone." I closed my eyes. "He told the family you were controlling, that you monitored him, that you left without warning because you were jealous. But when I asked questions, his story kept changing. Then I saw the messages." I didn't interrupt her. "He's been lying for a long time," she continued quietly, "and I think you are the only one willing to stop playing along." When the call ended, I sat there for a long time. Not because I needed validation, but because it confirmed something I'd already accepted. The truth didn't need defending. It was steady. It held. Later that evening, he sent an email. Long, emotional, carefully worded. He wrote about confusion, about feeling lost, about how he never intended to hurt me, how he wanted to work on himself and hoped we could talk. I read it once, then I closed it. I didn't respond. That was the moment my power returned. Not because I was punishing him, not because I wanted him to hurt the way I had, but because I finally understood that closure doesn't come from explanations. It comes from decisions. I packed the last of my things a week later, calmly, efficiently, without him there. No confrontation, no scene, just the quiet reclaiming of my life. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. And once you realize you're free, you stop negotiating with the past. The fallout didn't arrive with one big collapse. It came in fragments. Conversations I wasn't part of. Stories passed through mutual friends. Small truths surfacing one by one, each one quietly undoing the version of events he'd been selling. A few days after his sister called me, I started hearing things. Not directly, never directly. A friend mentioned seeing him at a coffee shop with the same man he'd insisted was just a friend. Another told me he'd been asking around, trying to figure out who knew what. Someone else said he looked exhausted, distracted, like a person constantly managing damage. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing any of it. What I felt was distance. The same people who had once urged me to be patient were now connecting dots on their own. They noticed how his explanations kept changing, how his timeline didn't match the messages, how quickly the narrative shifted from "I was misunderstood" to "things just happened." The truth has a way of surfacing without help. His family pulled back quietly, no public confrontation, just fewer calls, less defense, silence where certainty used to be. I didn't hear apologies, and I didn't need them. The absence of pressure was enough. He tried one last time, a late-night message sent from a new number I hadn't blocked yet. He said he missed me, said he finally understood what he'd lost, said he wanted to rebuild trust slowly, properly, the way we should have before. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted it. Not because it wasn't tempting, not because I didn't remember the good moments, but because rebuilding would have required me to step back into a version of myself who explained, justified, and waited to be chosen. I wasn't her anymore. Meanwhile, my life kept moving forward in small, grounding ways. I signed a lease on a modest apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just mine. No shared shelves, no second guessing, no tension lingering in the air. The first night there, I sat on the floor eating takeout from the container, surrounded by boxes, and felt something unexpected. Peace. Not happiness, not triumph, peace. Through mutual friends, I eventually heard that his new relationship didn't last. 2 months, maybe less. Apparently, the man he'd been so eager to explore things with wasn't looking for anything serious. Seeing other people, keeping things vague. I felt nothing hearing that. No vindication, no sadness, just indifference. That surprised me more than anything else. He moved back in with family not long after. Financial strain, social discomfort, too many reminders in an apartment that had once been shared. People said he regretted everything, that he told anyone who would listen that I was the one who got away. Maybe that was true, but regret doesn't rewrite history, and it doesn't rebuild trust. The consequences weren't dramatic, they were quiet, lingering, earned. And as his world slowly recalibrated without me at its center, mine finally felt like it belonged to me again. It's been 4 months since the night I packed quietly and walked away. My life looks different now in ways I never could have planned. I have my own apartment across town, small but intentional. Every object in it is there because I chose it. There are no shared drawers, no half explanations, no unspoken tension hovering in the air. I sleep better. I breathe deeper. I don't flinch when my phone lights up. He tried reaching out a few more times after that. Apology messages, promises to change. One drunk text at 2 a.m. saying he missed me and wished he could go back and do things right. I never replied. Eventually, the messages stopped. I ran into him once at a grocery store. We made eye contact from the end of an aisle. For a second, I thought he might approach me, say something meaningful at last. Instead, I turned my cart and walked away. Not because I was angry, but because I had nothing left to say. Through mutual friends, I learned his new relationship ended quickly. Apparently, the man he left emotional space for wasn't interested in commitment. He'd been seeing other people the whole time. When I heard that, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sadness, just a quiet confirmation of what I already knew. People don't suddenly develop integrity because they lose someone good. He moved back in with family not long after. The apartment was too expensive on his own. Too many memories. Too much silence. I heard he tells people now that I was the biggest mistake he ever made. Maybe I was. A mistake for someone who wanted comfort without accountability, stability without honesty, love without responsibility. As for me, I'm doing well. I've started seeing someone new. Nothing serious yet, just honest, calm, easy. When I told her about my past, about why I left, she didn't question my decision or ask what I could have done differently. She said, "At least you respected yourself enough to walk away." That sentence stayed with me. Looking back, I'm proud of how I handled it. No screaming, no begging, no public drama, just quiet dignity and a folder full of truth. I didn't need to win. I needed to leave whole. Here's what I learned and what I want anyone listening to understand. Emotional cheating is still cheating. Gaslighting is still abuse, even when it's subtle. And being called dramatic for having boundaries is a warning, not a flaw. The best revenge isn't confrontation. It's walking away from people who don't value you and building a life where you no longer have to question your worth. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the loudest form of self-respect.